Hello and Assalamu alaikum. I am Kashif Kamran and I welcome you to the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for March 2020 exams, which are being organized by ACCA Pakistan. And today is the day 3 of these webinar. Now, the focus of the day 3 is to practice procedures and evidence, which is a very important topic from an examination point of view. Now, irrespective whether you are giving AAA for the first time or you are repeating the AAA paper, all of you must be knowing that procedures and evidence is a very integral part of a 100 marks paper, and it is a very regular feature of your exam papers, right? So the day 3 is about practice, the procedures and evidence. Now, over the last 2 days, I have been focused on reading the mind of the examiner, which was on the day 1. And then on the day 2, yesterday, I was focused on risk of material misstatement and the audit risk. Now today, I am focusing on procedures and evidence. Let's see what I have in store for you today in the session. Now, I have chosen some exam questions which I will be going through in the tenure of the session today. If you see the left-hand side of your screen, you can see the practice questions which will be going into the session today. I'll be making use of two very latest questions from the June 19 exams, which is the question number 1 and the question number 3 from the June 19 exams in terms of procedures and evidence. Then I'll be making use of a question 4 from the June 17 exams for evidence, and then I'll be making use of the question number 2 from the December 16 exams for the evidence again. So 4 questions, right? Then on the right hand side of your screen, you can see, because I'll be partially solving these questions in the session, so I can give you a coverage of 4. I would expect that you complete them back at home. So I have put the same questions as your home questions, but I would expect that I will give you a start and you will continue on that and you will complete these questions, right? So that's the agenda for day 3, practice to pass, looking at procedures and evidence with 4 questions going into the live session today. Okay, now just before I start on with the exercise on procedures and evidence, and very consistently from the day 1 and day 2, I cannot just start the topic without giving you some sort of a background and some sort of a structure of the topic. And I just want you to be good at procedure, and I just want you to be good at evidence before I start drilling the exam papers with you. Now, when I speak of procedures and we look at the AAA paper, over my last few webinars, which you can explore on Vimeo, the ACCA Pakistan channel, I have been very consistent in the way I have been delivering my topic procedure. And that is exactly the same way I will be doing it in my session today. First of all of you should know that there is an examiner article, which is the exam technique article, part 4, which guides you about how to write a good procedure. So please assure that all of you do read this article, which is the exam technique article part 4, which is to write procedures, right? And that's in front of your screen. I even recommended that on the day 1 that you should have this article in your file, and this is the part 4 of the technique article. And if you read through this article, you will get to know the do's and don'ts of writing a good procedure. Again, you can have the red marker and the green marker when you're reading the article on audit procedures, and you can find so many things in greens, the do's, so many things in the red, the don'ts, and then you can be very clear about what is a quality or what is an attribute of a good procedure. So try to explore through this article, and on and off during my session today, I'll keep exploring this article just to give you a mindset that how important procedures are from an examination point of view. Now, just to make you familiar on the day 3 with this word file, which I've been using consistently again, when we look at the area procedures from the AAA exam point of view, first of all, you should understand that procedures is such a common area which comes in exam paper. You find procedures in the question number 1 even when the procedures are on the accounting issues. A lot of time you see the question number 1 and you will find on average 8 to 10 marks, or more ideally 10 marks allocated to procedures on accounting issues. Then when you look at the other topics, you can find procedures in question number 3 when the topic comes like other assignments. There are so many other assignments in the past paper where procedure is a regular feature. If you have seen the topic forensic, the forensic includes procedures. If you have looked at the topic prospective financial information as a other assignment, prospective financial information also have procedures. If you have looked at the topic audit of performance information, these are all other assignments which have been covered in my previous webinar, and these are other assignments which are a regular feature of your exam paper. Audit of performance information as a topic in the past paper also includes procedures. You look at the topic due diligence. Due diligence also has procedures. An examiner can ask you procedures on anything, anywhere in the 100 marks paper. But you should know the rule of making a procedure. You should know the rule of writing a procedure, whether the procedure is on an accounting issue, whether a procedure is on a non-accounting issue, or whether the procedure is on forensic, prospective financial information, audit of performance information, or due diligence. But the bottom line is that as a student, you should know what are qualities of writing a good procedure. And that is exactly what you will get out of the exam technique article part 4. So if you read this article, you explore this article, you'll be so very good on knowing the qualities of a good procedure. If you can do a drilling of this article with the red marker and the green marker, you should be so very good on identifying the qualities of a good procedure. And for sure, you will not make any mistakes. So if you want to avoid mistakes and if you want to write a very good procedure in the exam paper, you should make a habit of reading this article. Now try to understand when we look at procedures, and before I tell you the qualities of a good procedure, procedures, each procedure is worth 1 mark. So the marking scheme of a procedure is very simple. Each procedure you write, you will get 1 mark per procedure. So you look at the number of marks and you divide the number of marks with 1, and you know how many procedures you need to write in the exam paper. Now, I need to tell you the qualities of a good procedure. So when I tell you the qualities of a good procedure, you will definitely know how will you be gaining the 1 mark. But every procedure you write in the exam paper is with 1 mark. Now, another very important thing, you should be knowing that procedures, because they are written like bullets or they're written like sentences in exam paper, not paragraphs. Procedure is like a bullet, right? Procedure is like a bullet. Procedure is like a sentence. It is not a paragraph. So it is a very time efficient topic. It is a very time efficient topic. You can complete this topic within very less time in exam paper, provided you know the qualities of a good procedure and provided you know that the procedures are to be written in the form of bullets, sentences, not in form of a paragraph. So it is a very time efficient topic. Okay, now what are qualities of a good procedure when you write that in exam paper? If you look at my PowerPoint presentation, there are so many mnemonics I have used in my previous webinar, and perhaps a lot of student community might be familiar with them if they are repeating the AAA paper, and perhaps many of you might be taking it for the first time, so you will get used to that. One mnemonic which I have taken from the Examiner article is known as ASP. Then another mnemonic I took from another article of the Examiner was a mnemonic used as TAD-MSR. And I have my own mnemonic apart from ASP, apart from TAD-MSR. I have a mnemonic which is known as CVRM. So it is up to you, whichever thought process you like. I have a thought process of ASP. I have a thought process of TAD-MSR. I have a thought process of CVRM. Let's illustrate to you what exactly this ASP, TAD-MSR, and CVRM exactly stands for. If I take you back to my file, Word file, and we start with the qualities of a good procedure. Qualities of a good procedure. From the article of the Examiner, the quality of a good procedure is ASP. A good procedure should have an action. A good procedure should have a source, and a good procedure should have a purpose. These are three attributes of a good procedure you're writing in the exam paper. That a good procedure should have an action, a good procedure should have a source, and a good procedure should have a purpose. Action, like recalculate. Action, like discuss. Action, like analyze. You need to have an action at the start of a procedure because procedure means you are doing something. So when you need to demonstrate that you are doing something, you need to start a procedure with an action like recalculate, like discuss, like analyze, because these are actions. A procedure should have a source. You might be checking something. You might be inspecting something. For example, source. What are you recalculating? Are you recalculating depreciation? Then depreciation is the source. Are you recalculating the amortization expense? Then amortization expense is the source. If you are recalculating the finance cost, then finance cost is the source. So what are you recalculating? That becomes the source, number one. Number two, with whom are you discussing? With whom are you discussing? Are you discussing it with the internal auditor? Are you discussing it with the management? Are you discussing it with those charged with governance? So with whom are you discussing? So whoever the whom is, that whom becomes the source. The third and the last example. What are you analyzing? What are you analyzing? Are you analyzing the receivable days of the company, or you are analyzing the inventory holding period of the company, or you are analyzing the current ratio of the company? Whatever you are analyzing becomes the source. So I hope that source word is clear to all of you. What are you recalculating? That recalculating becomes your source. With whom are you discussing? That whom becomes your source. What are you analyzing? That analyzing, whatever you are analyzing, that analyzing becomes your source. So action, source, purpose, objective. What's the objective of performing a procedure? For example, if I say recalculate, recalculate is my action. Recalculate the amortization expense. That is the source. What am I recalculating? Recalculate the amortization expense. Why? To confirm it's accurate. So if I make 3 colors, my action is in yellow, my source is in green, and my purpose is in gray. Now if I just make that downwards, recalculate was my action. I was recalculating the amortization expense, that was my source, and it was confirming it's accurate. The accurate, confirm it's accurate was basically my purpose. Is that clear to all of you? How I did this exercise on ASP, recalculate the amortization expense to confirm it's accurate. Next, for example, discuss with management, discuss with management, discuss with management as to why the sales have increased by 25% over the last year. So when you discuss with management, that discussion becomes the action, management becomes the source, and what is the purpose? Purpose is to confirm why the sales have increased over the last year. So that basically becomes your purpose. And please, procedures are written in a bullet, in a sentence. So what procedures I'm writing on the Word file are complete procedures. If a procedure has an action, if a procedure has a source, and if a procedure has a purpose, it will give you 1 mark. Procedures are written like bullets, sentences. They're not written like paragraphs, right? So my first procedure, recalculate, is 1 mark procedure. My second procedure, discuss with management, is a complete 1 mark procedure. There is no ambiguity in my writing of procedure here. Number 3 and the last one, what are you analyzing? Analyze the receivable, analyze the current ratio. Analyze the current ratio to confirm the company ability to pay on the company ability to meet its short-term obligations on time. So analyze becomes my action, current ratio becomes my source because I was analyzing the current ratio, and to confirm the ability to pay, does the company have the ability to pay, that automatically becomes the purpose. Right? So you need to have an objective. Yes, the objective can be anything. Right? Objective can be the assertion, but assertions are mostly done in the AA paper, the F8 paper. But in the AAA paper, yes, the objective can be the assertion, but more broadly, the objective is the the purpose of performing the procedure. Is that exercise clear to all of you, ASP? I'm moving ahead of this exercise. That is the first mnemonic. Right? Just need your quick responses. Is everyone clear on ASP? Okay, the next. After ASP, the next mnemonic I have is TADMSR. Now, when you look at TADMSR, TADMSR is basically the type of actions, you can take. This is just like examples. And I've taken this from another examiner article, which is basically audit of performance information. And in that article, audit of performance information, the examiner did define to students what are examples of procedure. So examiner said that types of procedures, type of actions are T, perform test of controls, T, A, analytical procedures, D, discussion with anyone, M, minutes of the meeting, and we know as an auditor you review or you inspect the minutes of the meeting. Source, S, source document. We know the auditor is very much interested in inspecting the source document, inspecting the source. Auditor cannot perform a procedure without inspecting a source. So the source for the auditor is very important. The source can be a document, right? The source can be the fixed asset register. The source can be the bank statement. The source can be the cash book. And the last, recalculation. The last is the recalculation, R. So this TAD MSR mnemonic you can apply in any procedures, right? This is not just for one topic, this is for everyone because these are procedures, right? These are common procedures the auditor perform. Auditor perform analytical procedures, auditor do discussions, auditor do look at the minutes, auditor do look at the source document, auditor do recalculation. So this is not confined to a topic, right? This is for every topic. Because you cannot have a list of procedures other than this. This is a list of procedure you even do in the AA paper, in the F8 paper. Right? So is everyone sound on TAD MSR? Right? Quick yes and no. Is everyone sound on TAD MSR? Perform test of controls, analytical procedures, discussions, minutes of the meeting, source documents, and recalculation. So can they be used as type of actions? Actions in the exam paper? These are all actions, right? So TAD MSR is the type of actions you can use. Now, I had a mnemonic initially that when you are writing a good procedure, the good procedure should have CBRM. The good procedure, number one, should be case specific because that for me as a tutor is the most important thing. You cannot write a procedure out of the case study. Your procedure has to be within the case study. That is the most important attribute of writing a good procedure. So the first most important property of a good procedure is that it has to be case specific, right? And after that, it should have a verb. The verb is basically the action. R is the reason. The reason is basically the purpose. And M marks how many to write. 1 mark per procedure. So I've given you all the three mnemonics, right? ASP, action, source, purpose. TAD MSR, and a good procedure is CVRM. Now it's up to you which you stick into the exam paper, right? So it's up to you to choose which is best because everyone will have a different mindset, right? Everyone will have a different mindset, but you're not learning CVRM. right? You're not learning CVRM or TADMSR or ASP, and you're going to the exam hall and thinking what ASP stands for, what TADMSR stands for, what CVRM stands for. It's more about the application, right? But do you all agree with me? Do you all agree with me that the one of the best quality of a procedure is it has to be case specific? Quick answers. Do you all believe that one of the best property of a good procedure is it has to be case specific? You cannot write generic procedures. If you are writing generic procedures, you are failing the AAA paper. And if you want to pass the AAA paper, then you need to be case specific. Case specific is the key to success in the AAA paper. Right? So please make sure that you read the examiner article part 4, because that is a wonderful article that you should be exploring. Okay, one final thing, and we are starting on with the practice. There is a very common mistake the student do, which I want to guide. A lot of time, the students are very obsessed. The students are very obsessed with two things. The students are obsessed with two things. Number one, they are very much obsessed with the minutes of the meeting, and they're very much obsessed with the representation from the management. Is that true? Can you give me quick answers? Student community is a lot obsessed with minutes of the meeting and representation from the management, and they try to force them anywhere. They try to bring them anywhere. You ask them write procedures, you ask them write procedures, you ask them write procedures, and they will write it. Minutes, representation. So they're obsessed with it. That means they they're so much into the minutes, they're so much into the representation that they keep writing it, whether it is right, whether it is wrong. Now, for example, there is a student A who goes to the exam hall and he writes, the company has purchased a car. The company has purchased a car, right? And the student says, okay, I will write my first procedure, review the board minutes for the approval of the car. And he's so very happy, and he comes out of the exam hall happily that I will get 1 mark for my procedure, review the board minutes for the approval of the car. I have an A, I have an S, I have a P. There is a second student in the exam hall, which I refer as a student B, and the student B says, okay, the company purchased a car that is just a single car. The board will not approve a single car. So I will say, review the purchase invoice, review the purchase invoice to confirm the cost of the car and the ownership of the car. Do you believe that the board approve purchase of a single asset? Do you believe the board approves the purchases of a single asset? Quick answers. Do you believe the board will approve the purchase of a single laptop? The board will approve the purchase of a single computer? The board will approve this purchase of a single car? No. So was the student A right or was the student B right? Which was the right student, A or B? Obviously B. Okay, take another last example. The company incurred a capital expenditure. The company incurred a capital expenditure of $50 million. Now can you take a board minutes? Now can you take a board minutes? Yes. So board minutes So board minutes are valid in this case. Okay, let's take another last example from the representation letter, which is so badly used in exam paper. The representation. The students are so much obsessed with representation that they keep writing it whenever they wish to write it. Okay, representation letter. The company incurred the research and development cost for $10 million, and the student A says, number one, because he's obsessed, so he will say, okay, because the company incurred the research and development cost, I will first review the board minutes for the approval of the cost. And second, he will say, I will seek a representation letter on the completeness of the $10 million. And he comes happily out of the exam hall. If the company has incurred a research and development cost of a $10 million, no doubt it is a very significant incurring. Review the board minutes for the approval of the research and development cost is a very good procedure, is a very fine procedure. I'm not criticizing it. It is a wonderful procedure. Tick. But why are we seeking a representation letter? Do you not believe that we seek a representation letter when something is ambiguous? When something is an estimate, when something is uncertain, do you not believe that representation letters are taken for uncertainty, for anything which is estimate, for something which is subjective? They incurred a cost, right, which can be verified. They incurred a cost for which they can have a bank statement. They incurred a cost for which they can have a board approval. Then why there is a need for a representation letter here? Do you realize that the purpose of representation letter, the purpose of representation letter is when something is assumption based, example, fair values, like estimates, like going concern, fair value estimates, going concern, like a recoverable amount, in the case of impairment, or like the value in use. Yes, for the intention intention to sell or close something. Now, whenever you think there is an uncertainty, management wants to sell something, management wants to close something, management is determining the value in use, or management is determining the fair value. Anything which is assumption based, then only you can take a representation letter. Is that true? Quick answers. Is that true? So can we take representation letter in all cases, everywhere? Not at all. So are you getting to know the blunders the student do in the exam paper, that they're so habitual, of the board minutes, and they're so habitual of the representation letter that they keep writing it where even that is invalid. And you come happily out of the exam hall that I will get 1 mark, I will get 2 marks. No, you're not getting any marks for it. Right? So that ends the exercise on procedures. Now I need to solve a case with you, right? And I will be taking a break before that, before I start to solve a case study. In between the break, if you have time, I would be solving the case from question number 1, June 19 exams. It has been shared with you. So if you can just go over, because after the break, I will be solving question number 1 of the June 19 exams, which is about procedures. Let's see whether you understand the application. This is the question, right, which I will be solving right after the break. There are procedures in this question which I will be solving. This one, look at the B part in front of your screen. There are 10 marks to gain, 10 marks of procedures, right? Is that clear with all of you? So start reading this case in the break. I'm just taking a 10 minutes break for namaz, and post namaz break, I'll be resuming back with question number 1 of the June 19 exams. I'll be looking at the B part, and in the B part, I will be drafting procedures so that you're very clear on how you write a good procedure in exam paper. And after that, the session will change from procedures to evidence. And we need to spend a much better time on evidence because that is a more lengthy area and a more complex area. Is everyone clear on procedure so far? Okay, drop in your quick feedback for the first 40 minutes. I'm taking a break for 10 minutes and I'll resume back in 10 minutes time looking at the practice of procedures. And please keep dropping your feedback, how clear you had been in the last 40 minutes in terms of procedures. And when you entered the session, how unclear you were on procedure. And in the 40 minutes, how much differences come in, right? What's the difference between procedure and evidence? I'll be making that clear once I start this session on evidence, right? So we're off to a break till 10 minutes, right? So till 6:47 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, because it's currently 6:37. So 6:47 p.m. I'll resume back and we'll be looking at the question number 1B of the June 19 exam, right? Okay, please drop your feedbacks and I'll be seeing you live after 10 minutes. Off to a break. Hello and assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the day 3 of practice for procedures and evidence. We were on a break for 10 minutes, and prior to the break I was discussing the qualities and attributes of a good procedures and what are journal misunderstandings of the student community around writing a good procedure. Now we've already drilled that out, and we are about to start with an exam question, which is the question number 1B of the June 2019 exams. So let's drill the question so that we have a better understanding about how to apply the understanding of the procedure we got prior to the break. Now, if I show you the question paper, which is now in front of your screen, which is the B part, which I have just bracketed in the green border. It says design the principal audit procedures to be used in the audit of number 1, impairment of the factory, and number 2, the development cost capitalized in respect of the new packaging. Marks are 10. So the 10 marks will be divided into two parts. We will have 5 marks for the impairment of the factory, and we will have 5 marks for the development cost capitalized in respect to the new packaging. So let's see the case, because we cannot write the procedure without a case study. So the development cost capitalized and the impairment. So let's plan the answer. We need to first write procedures on impairment, and then we need to write procedures on the development cost impairment of the factory and the development cost for the new packaging. Development cost for the new packaging. And we have 5 marks for the impairment, and we have exactly the 5 marks for development cost for new packaging. Okay, let's see how to go it. Now we know the mnemonic, right? The mnemonic has to start with C, case. So let's see where is the case for impairment. Now those of you who were in the day 2 yesterday, we even did the same case study for risk of material misstatement. So I hope you remember the case for impairment and you remember the case for development cost, right? But still on the safe side, let's read it. Okay, now if I take you down in the case where we have a paragraph on impairment. Okay, this is the paragraph on impairment. Okay, now they are impairing their factories, and the factory has a carrying amount at 880,250, right? So this is the carrying amount of the factory. Now this is the case, this is the fact. We can agree the carrying amount back to the fixed asset register to confirm that it is exactly the same carrying amount, rather than the management has taken the wrong carrying amount in the working of the impairment loss. So we need to see the authenticity of the carrying amount. So we can agree this carrying amount back to the fixed asset register. So we are very sure that this is an authentic amount. Is everyone clear on that? The first one. So we because it is the working of impairment, right? So in the working of impairment, the first point is the carrying amount of the factories. So we need to agree the carrying amount of the factories to the fixed asset register to confirm the authenticity of the carrying amount, which is 880 and 250. So I'm writing my first procedure here. Number 1, review the fixed asset register. Review the fixed asset register to confirm the accuracy of the carrying amount of the factory prior to impairment, factory prior to impairment, that is $880 to 50. So you need to agree to the non-current asset register or the fixed asset register, the carrying amount, right, prior to any impairment being recognized. No, there is no need to have a physical verification, right? The company is telling you that there has been an indicator of impairment. You just need to confirm that the carrying value coming for impairment, you can have a physical inspection, right? Currently, we're just confirming the value. The value is 88250, which is definitely coming from the fixed asset register. So that is my first procedure, and that is coming from the case. The case was saying carrying amount 880,250. So I will put a tick mark. I've done it. Now comes to the next. Then the management has done the working. See, the management has done the working for impairment. If you can see this working of the management has done the working. This is all the working of the management. So I can review the working of the management. This is all the working, right? So I can make my second procedure. Review the management detailed calculation. Review the management detailed calculation for impairment to understand the methodology, and assumptions used by management in determining the recoverable amount. So I can just have a review of the management detailed calculation for impairment to understand the methodology they have used for the recoverable amount and the assumptions they have used for recoverable amount. So there was a calculation, so I can assure that the management working is appropriate. Now I can even have a discussion with management on the underlying basis of assumption, the underlying basis of fair value, and the underlying basis of value in use. Let's go down and read the case study. Now for the working, I just determined the management working. Now under the working, you can see a paragraph. It says the fair value less the cost to sell has been estimated based upon the sales proceed which could be generated from the selling of the damaged factory. So now I can have a discussion with the management about the basis of the estimate and about the basis of the sales proceed which could be generated from selling the damaged factory, right? So let's write the third point. Discuss with management the underlying basis of the fair value, of the fair value of the sales proceeds which could be generated by selling the factory. Fair value of the sales proceeds which could be generated by selling the factory. So I need to discuss with management that how you concluded on this fair value, what basis you have for this fair value, and so on and so forth. Now there is a second basis, which is the value in use. Again, I go back to the case. It says the value in use has been estimated. The value in use is estimated based upon the future sales which could be generated if the damage to the building is repaired and the new machinery is put into production factory. So I need to discuss with management that the value in use is the value in use of the present condition. When I'm determining the value in use, I cannot incorporate the future repair of the machinery. I need to take into account the value in use as at the present condition. So management is determining the wrong value in use. We identified this yesterday as a risk of material misstatement, right? So management is doing something wrong. So I need to discuss with management that the value in use is for the present condition of the building rather than incorporating the future repair of the building. So discuss with management the rationale why the takes into account value in use takes into account the future repair of. Ask management, why have you considered the future repair of the building when you were considering the value in use? What is the rationale? Let the management answer you, because the management has done something wrong here, right? So you want to confirm management, what was the rationale? Why you considered the future repair of the building while you were taking the value in use when it is the wrong accounting treatment? So discuss with management the rationale of doing so. So you have discussed the fair value with management. You have discussed the value in use with management. You have reviewed the calculation of the management calculation. You have discussed the fair value. You have discussed the value in use. You have also discussed the carrying amount. Now, finally, because it's a very subjective area, so you can seek a representation letter. Seek a representation letter on the adequacy or on the adequacy of the assumptions used in determining the impairment loss for the factories. So finally, we know that the representation letter is basically the last resort, and I used it in the last. First, I confirmed the carrying amount myself. Then I confirmed the calculations of the management, the assumptions used in the calculation. I confirm them to the management for the fair value and for the value in use. And then finally, I seek a representation letter from the management on the adequacy of the assumptions, because at the end of the day, the assumptions are still subjective. Auditor can himself develop an expectation of the recoverable amount, and auditor can compare the expected recoverable amount with the management amount. So auditor can even develop an own estimate. So if you want to challenge the estimate of the management, then you can develop your own estimate as an auditor. So that can also be a valid procedure in the exam paper, that you develop your own estimate of the recoverable amount as an auditor, and you compare your estimate with the management estimate to see how unusual the variance is. But try to look at my 5 procedures. Have I broken the rule of ASP? Have I broken the rule of ASP? Quick answers. Have I broken the rule of ASP? Are my procedures from case 1, 2, 3, 4? Did I try using the case study? Did I try using the case study when I was writing my procedures 1, 2, 3, 4? My procedure number 1 is from the case study. My procedure number 2 is from the case study. My procedure number 3 is from the case study, the fair value. My procedure number 4, the value in use, is from the case study. So what is concluding? That whenever you go to the exam paper and you need to write a procedure, you will look at the case, you will read the case, and you will identify facts. You will identify facts from the case. Plus, you will convert the facts into procedures. Convert the facts into procedures using ASP. Is that clear to all of you? Look at my formula. Procedure is to be case, case is to be read. When you read the case, you identify facts. When you identify facts from the case, convert the facts into a procedure as I did in front of you using ASP. Is that formula clear to all of you? Can that be a workable formula in the exam paper, or can that be a workable formula when you're practicing procedures at home? Quick answers. Right? A lot of time the student asks, what is facts? See my analysis on in front of the screen. The first fact was the carrying amount. The second fact was the working. The working was the second fact, right? Working was the second fact. Then the third fact was the estimates. So estimate was my third fact. Estimates, multiple estimates. So there were so many facts which I got from the case study, converting them into writing 5 procedures. Let's do a quick same exercise on development cost and exit from the exercise of writing good procedures. Now, when you see the development cost, which is another paragraph in the case study, okay, the paragraph for development cost is above, and there is a paragraph for development cost, this paragraph. We need to read this paragraph, right? Because this is the paragraph for development cost, which we need to focus on. Now, the examiner wants us to write 5 good procedures on the development cost, and let's see, can we write those procedures? It says, recently, concern over the level of plastic used in packaging has encouraged food producers to investigate the use of plastic-free packaging. In July 28, the board approved the budget of 400,000 to be spent on the research and development. So if you want to confirm this $400,000, you can confirm them back to the board minutes so that you are assured that the board did approve $400,000 to be spent on the research and development of the new packing products. So the board approved, so you can confirm them to board minutes. By 28th of February, $220,000 has been spent. So out of that, you have spent $220,000 has been spent. You can confirm the spent to the bank statements because you've spent that. You can even confirm the amount spent through different invoices, because I think you have engaged a firm here, ProPack, because the new packaging material is being developed by ProPack. So you can confirm the invoices from ProPack to confirm that $220,000 has been spent. You can check the cash book, you can check the invoices, because ProPack is making the new packaging material on behalf of this company. So you can confirm the invoices from the ProPack to confirm that $220,000 has been spent. Then I'm reading the last 3 lines. It is anticipated that the packing will be ready for use in 2 years' time. So it is anticipated, so we can discuss with management the anticipation, because anticipation is basically an assumption. So for the anticipation, we can either discuss with management their anticipation, or again, because this anticipation could be subjective, we can take a representation letter for the anticipation. Do everyone agree this anticipation is a subjective matter? It is anticipated that the packing will be ready for use in 2 years. This anticipation can be wrong. So do you believe there is an element of subjectivity in anticipation? The last line, ProPack is currently testing prototypes. So I can even have a visit to the ProPack, because ProPack is a company, and I can even have a correspondence with ProPack that what is the result of the prototype? Has it been successful? And it says it has encouraging results. So can I just have a confirmation from ProPack that the results of the prototype are indeed good? Because that will eventually means that the cost can be capitalized. But if the results of the prototypes are not good, then the development cost should not be capitalized. It should be expensed out. So do you find the facts? Is everyone getting the message of the facts from the case study? Number one fact, the board approved $400,000, right? Number one fact, board approved the budget of $400,000. The second fact we got from the case study is that you have already spent $220,000 spent. The third fact was that you have engaged a firm known as ProPack. So ProPack is a third party. You can correspond with ProPack to find whether this new packaging is being technical feasible or commercially feasible, because you know the conditions, right, to capitalize the development cost, the technical feasibility, the financial feasibility, or the commercial viability. The next fact we got from the case, it is anticipated. So on anticipated, we can have a discussion with management that it will be ready in 2 years' time. And fifth was that the prototypes. So we can discuss the prototypes with ProPack, confirming that indeed the prototypes are very successful and it has encouraging results. See how you quickly draft the 5 procedures now. When you put the next heading, research and development cost, and you write 5 procedures under research and development cost. Number 1, review board minutes for the approval of $400,000 budget for research and development. Number 2, review the invoices received from ProPack to confirm that $220,000 has been spent on research and development. Or alternatively, you can check the cash book or review the cash book for confirming the $220,000 has been checked, or the bank statement, anything. Number 3, you can review the you can correspond with ProPack. You can correspond with the ProPack to confirm, number 1, the results of the prototype, and the success of the results. And secondly, you can confirm with ProPack the progress on the new packaging and the chances of its commercial viability and the chances of its commercial the progress of the new packaging and its technical viability So a lot of discussions can be between the auditor and the ProPack, because ProPack is the firm which is engaged to provide this new packaging. So I hope all of you understand the importance of ProPack. Yes, you can write number 3 the way I wrote, right? In the exam paper, if you think one point has multiple reasons, then you can break the point as I broke the point 3A, 3B. So that's a very good way of writing answer in exam paper, right? So correspond with ProPack to confirm the results of the prototype and the progress on the new packaging and its technical viability. So to confirm it can be capitalized. Number 4, discuss with management the basis of their anticipation that the new packaging will be ready in 2 years time. The new packaging will be ready in 2 years time, or seek a representation letter. Now if you look at the three I wrote here, you can exactly write this in the exam paper, right? This is a very good way of writing procedure when you think one procedure has multiple reasons. An examiner says when you write one procedure with multiple reason, each reason will give you half a mark. So correspond with ProPack to confirm that was the procedure, right? Number 1 reason, I will get half a mark for the number 1 reason, and I will get half a mark for the number 2 reason. So I will get 1 mark for the reason, and I will get 1 mark for correspond with ProPack. So correspond with ProPack will give me 1 mark. So eventually I'm taking 2 marks from number 3. So examiner says when you write a procedure which has multiple reasons and each of the reason is a unique reason, every reason will fetch you half a mark. Is that clear to all of you? So please give me the final affirmative. I'm moving out of this topic, procedures. Are you clear on writing procedures through this exercise, which I have done in the last approximately 1 hour? Is everyone clear with the fundamentals of procedures, the article you have to read for procedure, and more importantly, the drilling I have done on the procedure? So is everyone finding a good way of writing a procedure? Case specific, right? I hope all of you are clear, right? No, the point number 4 is about the anticipation that the new packaging will be ready in 2 years' time. But the number 3 is corresponding with the third party. In number 3, you're corresponding with the third party. In the number 4th, you're corresponding with the management. How can both be the same point? In one, you're taking the perspective of the management because management believe it will be ready in 2 years. But in the number 3, you are corresponding with ProPack. Okay, that ends this journey. Let's start the next journey now. Now, it's not just procedures which comes in the exam paper, right? It is also the evidence which comes in exam paper, right? And are you prepared for evidence? And do you have a clear concept on the distinction, the distinguishment between procedures and evidence, right? Okay, so we're starting with the second journey, evidence, understanding. Let's see what your examiner expects from you on evidence, right? And again, just a housekeeping instruction. During the live webinar, when you are interacting and you are focused on the topic, it's like humanly impossible to reply to each and every question of a student. So as a better housekeeping instruction, you are already on the WhatsApp group. So if any of your query or any of your question which you think was a valid question was not raised, was not addressed, kindly put it on the WhatsApp group so it can be responded on a timely basis after the session comes to an end. And on the WhatsApp group, there are so many students which can even help you find the right answer. So the WhatsApp group has been structured for the support of the students, right? Because it's humanly impossible that you interact with each and every student during the course of the live webinar. Then again, the 3 hours will be spent just on the interaction and there will be no focus. There will be no focus on the topic. So either I focus on the topic or I focus on the interaction. And for the interaction, you have been given an opportunity, right? You have been given an opportunity of the WhatsApp group, right? So let's go back to the topic, which is evidence. And I hope that housekeeping instruction is loud and clear to all of you. Now, when you look at evidence, there are two types of questions which I have been communicating to the students since my previous webinars, that as a student, when you're preparing for evidence in exam paper, you need to assure that there are two types of questions which comes on evidence. And are you ready for the two types? Okay, let's structure it down. When you look at evidence as a topic in AAA, you need to remember that there are two types of questions on evidence in the past papers. Number one and number two. The number one is a very common question and a very typical question. And we know evidence is a topic which comes in question two, because evidence is a topic which is at a completion stage of the audit. So you cannot find evidence in the question number 1. You will definitely find evidence in the question number 2, because the question number 2 is set at the completion stage of audit. And since the new format of the paper has come in, evidence has only come in the question number 2. But yes, the question number 3 is the most open question, and anything can come in the question number 3. But if you want to be very stage focused, so as per the stage focus, the evidence is a topic which can come in the question number 2 only. Okay, let's see what are two types of questions which comes on evidence in past paper. Number 1, very typical question, which asks you comment on the matters and explain the evidence in the working paper file. That's one typical question. And if you're preparing yourself very effectively, you must have seen this question so many times in the past paper. Then there is a second question, which is so rare, which is so rare. You will find that once in a blue moon. That is, comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained by the audit team. Evidence obtained by the audit team. Now, this question is very rare. This question is like once in a very long term you get this question. And I think the last time it came was in December 16 exams, question number 2, not after. But the first question I wrote is a very regular feature, is a very regular feature, almost like you will find it in 3 out of 5 exam settings. 3 out of 5 exam settings, you will find this question. This is such a regular feature. So I need to prepare you for both. I need to give time to both, and I need to guide you about the marking scheme and the structure of the question which comes on evidence. Okay, let's be focused now. If I look at the question 1 first, and the question 1 says, comment on the methods and explain the evidence in the working paper file. It's so easy. Working paper file. Rather than saying question 1, let's say type 1. When you look at the type 1, it says comment on the matters and explain the evidence in the working paper file. Be sure there are two things here. 1, comment on the matter. 2, explain the evidence in the file. So let's break it down into two things. Comment on the matters is number 1. Evidence in the working paper file is number 2. Let's see the marks allocation and what to write in number 1, and the marks allocation and what to write in number 2. Now, when you look at the number 1, comment on the matters, the comment on the matters, because the matters in this question, the matters in the question on evidence, the matters in the question on evidence are all accounting matters. The matters in a question on evidence are all accounting matters. So the comment on the matters you are doing is number 1, you are commenting on the materiality of the matter, as you do in the question number 1 yesterday. Do you remember how we used to comment on the risk, on the materiality in the question yesterday on risk of material misstatement? Quick answers from all of you. Right? Then the second commenting, you will do the commenting on the accounting treatment, as you were doing yesterday in a question on risk of material misstatement. Then you will do the commenting on the risk and the impact. It is exactly the same thing you were doing in ROMM yesterday, or the audit risk yesterday, and you're repeating the same thing because yesterday even we had an accounting matters. Now in this question we also have an accounting matter. So what is the rule of thumb? Wherever you get an accounting matter in AAA, These are basic requirements of an accounting matter. Wherever you get an accounting matter, you need to find the materiality of it, you need to find the treatment of it, and you need to think whether the accounting matter is wrong, then what is the risk and the impact. So these are typical things you need to do with an accounting treatment in the AAA paper, whether it comes in a question number 1 or whether it comes in the question number 2. Is that clear to all of you? Now, how many marks are you getting? Yesterday, you were getting less marks. When you were doing this yesterday in a question on ROMM, how many marks were we getting yesterday? When we were doing this in the ROMM? 3. But because it is a different topic now, the marking scheme here is different. The marking scheme here is 1.5 for materiality, 1.5 for accounting treatment, 1.5 for risk and impact. So the total marks you're gaining from it is 4.5 marks. You are doing exactly the same thing, right? You are doing exactly the same thing, but you're getting how many marks? 4.5. The capping of marks for materiality, which I guided you yesterday, was only for question 1. I was very loud and clear yesterday that the capping of marks for materiality is only in question 1. That that also when the question comes on audit risk and risk of material misstatement. Is that clear to all of you, that capping of marks we were discussing for materiality yesterday, that is only for the question number 1, and that is only when a question comes on audit risk and risk of material misstatement. Apart from that, in the entire 100 marks paper, there is no cap for materiality. There is no cap for materiality. That is only for the question 1 on audit risk and risk of material misstatement, not for any other question. Is that capping of materiality marks clear to all of you? Okay, so comment on the methods. Is that clear? Comment on the methods. 4.5 marks. Now you come to the second part, right? So whenever the examiner says comment on the methods, which methods are you commenting on? Materiality, accounting treatment, risk and impact. So when you comment on the materiality, you will get 1.5 mark. When you comment on the accounting treatment, you will get 1.5 mark. When you comment on the risk and impact, you will get 1.5 mark. So that's exactly what you do in the question number 1, but the marking scheme here is more generous, right? I hope that's clear and sound for everyone. Now, once I solve a question with you, which says comment on the methods, so I will be making a paragraph which will have materiality, which will have treatment, which will have risk and impact, MTRI, as we had yesterday. But the marks will go up to 4.5, right? Is that clear to all of you? Next thing. Evidence in the working paper file. Evidence in the working paper file. In the working paper file. Now, when you're writing the evidence in the working paper file, you need to be very clear that the evidence in the working paper file, because we're looking at a file, and I hope all of you can imagine a file, right? When you look at the evidence in a file, the file will have evidence in a form of working papers, right? In the file, we have working papers. So do you believe working papers are something like tangible working papers? So what is the evidence in the file? The evidence in the file is basically the working papers, right? Now imagine that you have a file and the file contains the working paper. The file contains the working papers, and the working papers is known as the evidence. So whatever evidence you gather during the course of the audit gets to the file. So what is in the file? Papers. Now there are so many forms of working papers. The working papers can be number 1. The working paper can be a copy of something. Like the working paper can be the copy of lease agreement. The working paper can be a copy of the loan agreement. The working paper can be the copy of board minutes, etc. So my working paper, I cannot have the lease agreement and the loan agreement as original, right, in my file. So anything which I put in the file should be a copy because it belongs to the management. So why are we writing the word copy? Because it's a management document. So if it is a management document, I will simply be writing copy of as my working paper. Same happens with bank statement, right? Any document which belongs to management, rather than the student starts to question, what about cash book? What about fixed asset register? What about bank statement? The rule is clear. Whichever document pertains to management, you need to write the word copy of, because any document of management cannot be without copy. Is that clear to all of you? So a copy of a lease agreement, a copy of a loan agreement, a copy of the board minutes, or copy of any management records, or copy of any management document. Second, in the working paper, there can be lots of things which should not have a copy, which should not have a copy. For example, in my working paper, I will have the representation from management. Now, just the last question I was doing with you for development cost, and just the last question I was doing with you for impairment, did we took representation from the management in both the questions? So I cannot have the copy of the representation in my file because the representation belongs to the auditor. So I will not say copy of the representation, rather I will say representation from the management is basically the evidence which I have in the working paper file. So some of the working papers can be original, some of the working paper can be copy. Confirmation letters. We know auditor sends the confirmation letters, right? So I cannot have a copy of the confirmation letter because it is something which belongs to the auditor. So it will be confirmation letter, not the copy of the confirmation letter. And in your working papers, there will be something like notes of discussions, because whenever you discuss with management, you have notes of discussions as a working paper. If you recalculate something, you will have results of recalculation in your working paper file. So the results will become the working paper. Results of recalculation, results of analytical procedures. So if you do some recalculations, you will have results. Results is your working paper. Notes, if you discuss with someone, the notes is your working paper, right? The confirmation letters, right? We send to the third parties. I hope you've done your F8 paper. Confirmation letter to the receivables, to the suppliers, to the banks. At times, the AAA students ask questions like such, as if your F8 paper was exempt. I hope you understand the confirmation letters, right? You send to the third parties in the F8 paper, in the AA paper. So I cannot have a copy of the confirmation letter. I should have I should directly say the confirmation letters, right? So confirmation letter is assumed that it is going to the third party. We should not say third party confirmation. Confirmation letter is by default a letter which is sent to the third party. So how many types of working papers I can have in my file? In my working paper file, what sort of papers I can have? Suppose this is your file. This is your working paper file. What sort of working papers I can have in my file? I can have copies of so many things, right? I can have results of so many things. I can have notes. I can have notes of so many things. And I can have so many things in my working paper file as original. I can have original things in my working paper file too. So is everyone clear on the uh, types of papers I will have in the file? Give me quick answers. Is everyone clear on the types of papers which I will be having in my file? Either I will have notes in my file, either I will have copies in my file, either I will have results in my file, either I will have something original in my file, right? So examiner is saying explain the evidence in the working paper file. Is that clear? So is everyone sound on the requirement? Comment on the methods and explain the evidence in the working paper file. Okay, that completes the first. I just need quick answers from you. I'm moving towards my next question now. This question in front of your screen, which says comment on the methods. Is everyone clear on the word comment on the methods? Do everyone know what you need to do when the examiner says comment on the matter? And do everyone knows how many marks will you be getting for the comment on the methods? Right? So when the examiner says comment on the methods, what will you do? You will start to write the MTRI, right? So it's a pretty simple question. Comment on the methods. Which matters? Materiality, treatment, risk, and explain the evidence in the working paper file. Okay, let's do an exercise on it. I've chosen the June 17 question for this exercise, which is basically the June 17 question number 4. Can you see the requirement of this question? It is exactly the one I was telling you. Question 4 of the June 17 paper, which has been chosen as a sample paper for this live webinar. Can you see the requirement? It says comment on the matters to be considered. Which matters? Which matters? Materiality. Which matters? Treatment. Which matters? Risk and impact. How many marks will I get for it? If I comment on the materiality, I will get 1.5. If I comment on the treatment, I will get 1.5. If I comment on the risk and impact, I will get 1.5. So comment on the matters to be considered. And then the examiner says, explain the evidence, right? So evidence can be in the form of notes, evidence can be in the form of copies, evidence can be in the form of results, and the evidence can be in the form of something original. Is that structure clear to all of you? Right, so this is the type 1 question which comes in exam paper. Comment on the matters to be considered. You know the breakdown of the comment on the matters, and you know the breakdown of evidence. How many marks will we get for evidence? 1 mark. 1 mark per evidence. Okay, is everyone clear? I'm moving towards the case study now. I need to solve one of that with you so that you know the idea of writing the comment on the matters and you have an idea of writing evidences, right? 1 mark per evidence, right? Can I proceed first to the case study? Is everyone done, ready, structured? Quick answers? Okay, let's go towards the case. Look at the first part. The first part is for 7 marks. Now, when you see 7 marks and you have to do 2 things, now you're very sure with the marking scheme. In the 7 marks, there are 4.5 marks for methods, and the remaining 2.5 marks are for evidence. Is that clear to all of you? In the 7 marks, because you have to comment on the matter, in the 7, how many marks will you take for comment on the matters? 4.5, and the remaining 2.5 will go to evidence. So cost of inventory. Let's prepare ourselves for the answer. Okay, let's do one illustrative answer with all of you. One illustrative answer to the type 1 question, on evidence. And I'm taking an example for the type 1, which is June 17, question number 4, part A. Now the part A is the cost of inventory as a heading, and the cost of inventory has marks which are 7. Now for 7, I have to do two things, matters and then evidence in working paper file, right? Now let's give you a suggestion here. Suppose this is an answer of a student A, right? A student A in the exam hall finds a question on cost of inventory, and he divides the answer into two parts, matters and evidence, and he concludes that out of the 7 marks, there are 4.5 marks available for matters, because the matter means MTRI, and then the remaining marks will go on the evidence. So that is 7 minus 4.5 is equal to 2.5 marks remaining. So that means you need to write three evidence in the file to make up your 7 marks. Can you understand what the importance of reading and planning? Can you understand how important it is to break the marks before you start to write them? Now, when you look at a 7 marks question, you should plan it that in the 7 marks, there are 4.5 marks which are allocated to materiality, treatment, risk, and impact. And then the remaining marks will go to the evidence in the file. So the student A is on the right track of making a good sketch of the answer. Now you start to write the methods. Now, just for 1 minute, can you just read this case in front of your screen, cost of inventory? I'm just giving you a minute. Can you just go through cost of inventory in the green box? I'm not reading it. You have to read it in 2 minutes. Read the cost of inventory to see what's happening in the cost of inventory. And when you are done, say yes. Okay, whoever completes it, please put in the chat box done, yes, okay, something like that. So I know how many of you have done through. Okay, that's good. Now quite a number of students have done it. So let's start to execute the answer. Now, when you're writing the answer and you follow the technique which I just guided you, that you want to go with the technique of MTRI, and you start writing an answer for that. Firstly is the materiality, right? You will first start with first line, the inventory valuation at the year end of $21 million is, can you divide the 21 million with the total assets? 1919. I hope all of you have seen the total assets of the company, which is 1919 million. Okay. The evidence, the inventory valuation at the year end of $21 million is 1.09% of the total assets, because it's a balance sheet item of the total assets, thus material to the financial statements, material to the financial statements. How many marks will I get for this? Comment on the materiality. 1.5. Bracket open. 1.5 bracket close. Next, treatment. Do you believe that the inventory valuation as per IAS2 depends upon the lower of cost and the net realizable value? Right? Inventory valuation, inventory is a balance sheet item, right? $21 million is the closing inventory. The closing inventory is a balance sheet item. If you want to divide it by the profit because it's part of the cost of sales, you can also divide it. But primarily it's a balance sheet item. So in the exam, even if you have done with one, that's fine. Okay. Do you believe inventory is valued at the lower of cost and the net realizable or the net realizable value? Which cost? Actual cost or the estimated cost? Inventory is valued at the lower of cost or the net realizable value, the actual cost or the estimated cost of inventory. So what has the management done wrong here? Has the management taken the estimated cost? If you've read the case well, is that true? The management has taken the estimated cost. And do you believe wherever there is an estimate, there is a risk? I hope when you've read the case, there are so many elements of estimations, right, in the case study. Management have used so many estimates. So wherever there is an estimate, that's risky. So what treatment are you writing? You are saying the inventory should be valued at the lower of actual cost, not estimated cost, or the net realizable value. However, in the case of this company, the management has valued the inventory at the estimated cost. 1.5 marks. Now you come to the risk and the treatment, risk and the impact. Anything anything estimated by the management is inherently risky, and contains a risk of management bias. Thus, the inventory could be wrongly valued. I hope you remember my lecture yesterday. Risk is something different, impact is something different. So what is the risk? The risk is that the inventory could be wrongly valued. The inventory could be wrongly valued and thus could be overstated. Full stop. See, I got my remaining 1.5 marks. See the structure of the answer. I've demonstrated how to write matters. This is a complete answer for those of you who write lengthy answers. I didn't drag my answer. I was very specific. I was very specific to the case study. A lot of students drag the answer. They will write the complete IS2. They will not be satisfied till the time they write the complete IS2, because the students are so obsessed. Whenever they say, okay, IS2, oh, I know the whole IS2, and I'll start to tell everything to the examiner about IS2. You're not telling everything about IS2. You're only keeping IS2 to the case study. We discussed that yesterday, that the treatment has to be briefly described. Do you remember the wordings of the examiner from the session yesterday? Treatment has to be briefly described. So can you understand the material, accounting treatment followed by the risk, wrongly valued, and risk followed by the impact, overstated. Can you see the 4 yellow sentences I just made in front of you? MTRI, wrongly valued. You combine the paragraph or you separate the paragraph, you will still get the same marks, right? Presentation is a student choice, how you present. This is my way of presenting answer. You can have a different way for it. but this is a very good way of presenting the answer, that you convert the paragraph into M, then T, then you make a consolidated paragraph for R and I. Risk and impact goes together. Yes, in the same way you answer the audit risk question, in the same way you answer the risk of material misstatement question. But over there, how many marks will you get for the same answer? 3, not 4.5, right? This is exactly the same way you will answer an audit risk question, right? This is exactly the same way you will answer the risk of material misstatement question. But the marks are 3, not 4.5. Over here, the marks are 4.5. Is everyone clear? Sound on matters? Right now, I need how many evidences? I need 3 evidences, right? Okay, evidence has to come from the case. Can I have notes of discussions with the management as to the rationale why the company has used the estimated cost, not the actual cost? Is that my evidence? Not discuss with management, because that will be a procedure, but can I have notes of discussions with management to confirm that what is the rationale of using the estimated cost, not the actual cost? Number one. So can I have the notes of discussion with management to confirm the rationale why the estimated cost was used for inventory valuation, inventory valuation. Can I also have the results of the recalculation? Because the auditor must have recalculated the inventory valuation. So can I have the results of the recalculation of the inventory valuation? Because the auditor must have recalculated that, right? So I can have results of recalculation of inventory valuation to confirm the accuracy of the inventory valuation performed by management. But first I need to ask them, why have they considered the estimated cost? Why not the actual cost? Then after that, I will do my results of recalculation. So can you understand the evidence notes, evidence results? Can I have a copy of the management working for $21 million? Because the management has calculated the $21 million based upon a working. So can I have a copy of the inventory valuation report or the inventory valuation working of the company? So I can have the copy of the inventory valuation performed by the company to confirm that inventory is valued at $21 million. And there is so much you can do. There are lots of students are giving me some answers, questions in terms of like suggestions. Can we do this? Can we do this? You're all valid, right? You're all valid, whatever you're raising, because I just have 3 marks to gain, right? So I just prioritize my 3 marks. Copy, results, notes. Yes, you can even have a representation letter because there is so much estimates here. Yes, obviously, I know the student community cannot live without representation letter. So even if they don't see representation letter in a 3 marks answer, they get shocked. So this is the reality of the student community, right? That they can't see an answer without a representation letter. See how good you are. At least you learn one thing in the last 3 hours, representation letter. Wonderful. I hope you learn the other things in the same way. Is that clear to all of you? The way you learn the representation letter, please also learn the other things in the same way so that you can be successful in the AAA paper. So your memories are good, but only for representation letter, right? Is that clear? Type 1 question. So is everyone sound on the type 1 question? I need to shift to type 2 now, right? So is everyone clear with the type 1 understanding? If the question asks you comment on the matters, everyone knows what to do. And when the question says evidence in the working paper file, do everyone know how to do it? How many of you had a confusion on the topic evidence prior when you joined the session? And now how is the confidence level on your evidence? Because it is such a structured topic. I think there is no difficulty in evidence provided you know how to take marks. A lot of time the students are unclear with the structure. Examiner says comment on the matter and they're confused. Examiner says evidence in the working paper file, they're confused. But do you know the breakdown of the matters, and will that make your life easier now? And do you know the how to write evidence in the working paper file? I hope that will clarify your answer. You still have a lot of time to practice before you get to the actual exam hall, right? So I hope this last 30 minutes on the type 1 question has been productive for all of you and must have been an eye opener for a lot of you doing mistakes on a question on evidence. Okay, that wraps the first aspect of evidence. Now let's spend time on the second aspect of evidence. Point number 2 is about my working, my recalculations. And the point number 3 is the management working, because auditor do the result of recalculation on a sample basis, right? But I need to have the copy of the inventory valuation report because it is confirming the total value. So total value is coming from the working of the management, because auditor do whatever is on a sample basis. So you cannot get the total value from the auditor working, right? Okay, let's get to the type 2 then. Prepare ourselves for the type 2 question. I need to take a break, so I'll just structure the type 2. I'll go for a break and come back and start answering the question on type 2. But just before we go to the break, let's see the type 2 question on evidence. What does that mean? This is very rare, right? Last time it came was in December 16, question number 2, and I'll be taking the same question as my illustration. Yes, one matter. One matter means one matter has how many things? 4. One matter has materiality, one matter has treatment, one matter has risk, one matter has impact. That makes one matter. That one matter combines of 4 things, right? And that one matter gives you 4.5 marks. Okay, let's do the type 2. The type 2 is very simple. It says comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the audit evidence. Comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the audit evidence obtained by the audit team. Question mark. Now the marking scheme is simple. Here, for every comment on sufficiency and appropriateness of audit evidence, SAAE, okay, please again questions, put the questions on the WhatsApp group for the proper answering. For every comment on SAAE, you will get 1 mark per comment. 1 mark per comment, right? Now, what does comment on sufficiency and appropriateness means? Comment on SAAE means what? As simple as that. As simple as that. It means that in the case study, the evidence gathered by the audit team, do you believe it is appropriate or inappropriate? If it is inappropriate, justify why it is inappropriate to score 1 mark. Now, when you read the case, as simple as that, it means that in the case study, the audit team must have gathered the evidence and you are critically evaluating their evidence. So if you believe that the evidence gathered by the audit team is inappropriate, So you will justify why it is inappropriate to score 1 mark. I hope you remember a question which comes in reporting: critically appraise the draft audit report. How many of you remember that question? Critically appraise the draft audit report. You do exactly the same thing there as well, right? When you are critically appraising the audit report, you try to identify the weaknesses and you tell why it is a weakness. So when you are commenting on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence, you need to justify whether the evidence gathered is appropriate or the evidence gathered is inappropriate. If it is inappropriate, justify why it is inappropriate to score 1 mark. Or if it is appropriate, then justify why it is appropriate. Why it is appropriate to score 1 mark. So it is both ways, right? It is both ways. This is exactly what you do in a question on audit report: critically appraise the report. If you think there is a weakness in the report, you will say why. If there is a strength in the report, you will say why and score marks. So comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. If it is inappropriate, why? If it is appropriate, why? 1 mark. Is that clear to all of you what you exactly needs to do when a question comes on comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence? Right? Now, I hope you know the rules very clearly, just to give you some thought process before the break so that you can explore them during the break and I do a question. Evidence is appropriate when it is, number one, let's see how many of you know this from the F8 paper. Evidence is appropriate when it is in writing rather verbal. Is that true? Which is appropriate evidence, writing or verbal? Writing. Evidence is appropriate when it is original rather photocopy. So if the management gives you a photocopy, you will say no, I need original so I can see it. Evidence is more appropriate when it comes from the third party rather management. Is that true? Evidence is more appropriate when it is gathered by the auditor himself. Gathered by the auditor himself, like recalculation, or like observation. When something is done by the auditor himself, like recalculation, like audit, like observation, etc. So do you believe these are rules you learn in the F8 paper, in the AA paper? What makes evidence more trustworthy, more reliable, more appropriate? Writing, original, third party, gathered by the auditor himself. Evidence is more appropriate when the sample size is adequate. That means more samples when the risk is high. If there is a high risk and the sample size is less, is that appropriate? If there is a high risk and the sample size is less, is that appropriate? No. But if there is a high risk and the sample size is high, is that right? So the sample size is adequate. Next, uh, evidence is appropriate when it is gathered by a senior rather than a junior on risky areas, Is that right? The evidence will be more appropriate if it is gathered by the senior rather than a junior on a risky area or on a complex area. So I hope these examples will help you identifying the problems in the case study, that you need to comment on whether the evidence is appropriate or inappropriate. If you say appropriate, justify. If you say inappropriate, justify. So 1 mark per comment on the sufficiency, right? Is that clear? Quick feedbacks. I'm going on to a break for 10 minutes and resuming back directly with a live question. In the break, you can read through the December 16 question number 2 of the December 16 exams, because that's what I will be doing right after the break, and a lot more things to learn in the last 45 minutes of the session today. So please don't miss in the last 45 minutes, because it's not just the solving of the question, it's more beyond solving of the question, because you will be learning a lot more good things from the solving. This question, right? Question number 2, December 16 exams. uh, this is a long question, and I've already done this in my previous webinar. So I will be doing just an illustration of it from the first mark 7. I will be solving the first 9 marks. So please have 5 minutes on this during the break. So post break, once I start directly with the 9 marks answer, you are very clear on going through asset held for sale. So read the case, understand the case, and 10 minutes after, I'll resume back with the final session, final leg of the last session for day 3, which will be approximately for 45 minutes after the 10 minutes break, right? I hope the session has been productive today. Drop your feedbacks, please, and please assure that at the end of the session, you drop the affirmative feedback, which comes on your screen once the session gets over. Okay, so time for the second break into the session. Please keep yourself fresh and mentally present in the session. So have a good break. Uh, let's resume at break, and I will resume at 8:15, 8:15 p.m. after 10 minutes. Okay, break. And please keep dropping your feedbacks during break and also read the question. Hello and assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the day 3 of the practice for procedures and evidence. And we were looking at the type 2 question on evidence prior to the break. And this is now the final 45 minutes of the session for day 3, which will give you insights about how can you handle a question on evidence, which is basically the type 2 question, which says comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence. Now, I hope you've read the case. I just want to give you a structured analysis of the case in terms of December 16. If you look at the requirement of this December 16 paper, because these are very uncommon questions and comes after a very long time, and you cannot just be underprepared on this question. There could be a possibility that you might find a question like such in your exam sitting in March 2020, because it has not come since very long now. The question says, in respect of the 3 matters above, there are 3 matters above, right? I'm solving one of them. Number 1, comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence obtained. So the first thing you need to do is you need to comment, and for every comment you will get 1 mark. Comment. Okay, number 2 things you have to do is you need to recommend procedures. So you know how to write procedures, right? Recommend procedures. CVRM, you need to write procedures that should be performed by the team. Now, obviously, if you think that the evidence is insufficient or inappropriate, then obviously you need to write more procedures. So examiner is saying you need to recommend further procedures. And then finally, the examiner says you need to explain the matters which should be included in the report in accordance with ISA 265, communicating deficiencies in internal control system to those charged with governance. So as simple as that, you need to explain the methods. You need to explain the methods which relates with deficiencies in the internal control system. So the methods which should be included in the report. The examiner is not asking you to write a report. The examiner is saying what methods will be included in the report. Which methods will be included in the report? The deficiencies in the internal control system. So we need to identify the deficiencies in the internal control system. Now we are solving one of the requirement, which is asset held for sale. And the requirement for asset held for sale is 9 marks. Now, how would you break the 9 marks? Because you have to do 3 things. Let's see the structured analysis of this question. Again, I'm taking this as an illustrative answer as I took the previous one. So be very focused because I need to make a complete 9 marks analysis. Illustrative answer for December 16, question 2, part A only, which is asset held for sale, right? And this is an illustrative answer for type 2 evidence, type 2 question on evidence, right? Asset held for sale, 9 marks. Now, 3 things to be done, right? It's very important that you do the planning because without planning, you will not understand the 9 marks, right? Now, 3 things to be done. Number 1, you need to comment on SAAE, and for each comment you will get 1 mark, 1 mark per comment, right? Number 2, you need to perform procedures, and for each procedure you will get 1 mark per procedure, right? And you know the procedures are made with CVRM, as I discussed in the first part of my session today. The last thing, you need to communicate deficiencies in internal controls. And for every deficiency, for each deficiency you communicate, you will get 1 mark per deficiency. And telling why it is a deficiency, right? 1 mark per deficiency, also telling why it is a deficiency, why it is a deficiency. Is that marking scheme clear to all of you? 1 mark per. You have to take total of how many marks? 9. So you have to take 9 marks in this context. Now, do you realize that when a question has so many things when a question is asking for so many things, is it important to plan it before you write it? Now, when I know that I have to do 3 things, I know the marks, then only I can write a good answer. But if I just start to write the answer without even knowing what comment on sufficiency means, what are procedures, what deficiencies I should be communicating, will I get 1 mark, will I get 2 marks? Is everyone sound on that? If I can get your quick yes and no's, just to assume just to assure that you are all alive. Okay, so let's start getting the answer track now, right? Okay, that's great to see your yes and okay and done. Yes, you can do the rough working in the exam paper, right? You can do this as a rough working in the exam paper and then start on with the answer. Examiner would really like students to do the rough working because that demonstrates the evidence of planning. So you can do the rough working, or at least in your answer booklet, you can keep 3 to 4 pages in your answer booklet for the rough working, right? So you can keep some pages for rough working, and then you can make a fair answer, a proper answer. Okay, let's see comment on the sufficiency, right? Let's go to the case study. Okay, I'm reading the case. Tell me what is right, what is wrong. I'm reading the asset held for sale. Due to the planned disposal of one of the Therman Company factory sites, the property and the associated assets have been classified as held for sale in the financial statement. Okay, that's good. A manual journal has been posted by the finance director to reclassify the assets as current assets and to adjust the value of assets for impairment and reversal of the depreciation charged from the date at which the asset met the criteria to be classified as held for sale. So the director has classified the asset as current assets because you intend to sell them in under 12 months, and the finance director has adjusted the value of the asset, that is the lower of the carrying amount or the fair value less the cost to sell, and no depreciation has been charged since it has been classified as held for sale, right? We're not doing anything on the accounting treatment in this question, right? Because examiner is not asking us to write the accounting treatment. Examiner is saying comment on the sufficiency, procedures, and weaknesses. Do you think this is a weakness here? A manual journal has been posted by the finance director. Do you think this is the work of the finance director to post the manual journal entries? Is finance director paid for such petty things? Such petty things? So do you believe this is a deficiency in the internal control system that the finance director of a company is posting a journal entry? So should we identify this as a weakness? Right? Next, the finance director asks the senior to check the journal before it is posted. On the basis there being no one with the relevant knowledge to do this at the Thurman company. Do you believe this is another weakness? The finance director is saying there being no one with the relevant knowledge in to do this in the Thurman company. So do you believe that the company does not have very competent finance department? And that is one of the reasons that the finance director is posting the manual journal. So I have underlined two things in blue. Do you believe these are weaknesses? A manual journal posted by the finance director, and then the finance director is asking the senior, can you check the journal? Because there being no one with the relevant knowledge to do this at Thurman Company. So no one in the Thurman Company's finance department knows asset held for sale, and no one knows the accounting entry for asset held for sale. So two weaknesses, right? How many marks will I get for two weaknesses? If I write them properly, why it is a weakness? 2 marks, right? Next paragraph. Let's change the ink color because I need to find the other issues. The planned disposal was discussed with the management. Do you believe discussion only is a sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Should not I have done something on the planned disposal, like I would have reviewed the board minutes, or I would have confirmed the conditions of IFRS 5? I would have seen that what is the management doing to sell it? Has the management contacted any potential buyer, or has the management put an advertisement in the newspaper for selling the asset? Have I done anything on the IFRS 5 apart from just a discussion with the management of the planned disposal? And do you believe discussion alone is sufficient? Because you should have sufficient appropriate audit evidence, right? You should have confirmed whether a tender to sell the asset have been put in the newspaper, or what steps the management is taking to assure that the asset will be sold in the next 12 months. So do you all believe that the planned disposal was discussed with the management alone is insufficient? A brief note has been put in the working papers stating that the management opinion is correct. A brief note, was this a ordinary event? How can I put a brief note for something which is extraordinary? Do you believe asset held for sale happens every month, every day? If something is extraordinary, how can I put a brief note? If something is extraordinary, I should put a detailed note. I cannot put a brief note for something extraordinary. A brief note is the problem here, right? And what am I putting in the brief note? That the management opinion is correct. Should I put my opinion in the brief note, that whether I agree with the management or not? Or should I put in the brief note that the management opinion to classify the factory is correct? So it is my note, right? I should put my judgment in the note rather than I put the management judgment in the note. So brief note is a wrong thing. It was only discussed with the management is wrong. And then you come to the last line. The manual journal has been arithmetically checked. Okay, that's good. By a different member of the audit team. By a different member of the audit team. Now, how many people are working on asset held for sale? Do you not believe one person should work on an asset held for sale rather than so many people work on asset held for sale? Is that wrong? One person, right? One person should work on one area. How many people should work just on asset held for sale? So it has been arithmetically checked by a different member of the audit team is another problem for the auditor. And the amount agreed back to the non-current asset register. Do you believe that the asset held for sale will be in the non-current asset register? Or do you believe that the asset held for sale must have been removed from the non-current asset register? Do you believe that is right? That you agreed the amount back to the non-current asset register? Because you believe that this asset has been removed from the non-current asset register and it has now been put in the current assets. So how many problems have the auditor done? 4. So how many comments on the sufficiency I can do? 4. So any mistake done by the auditor is the comment on the sufficiency, right? So can you see the orange and the blue? The blue is the weaknesses in the internal control system, 2 marks. And the orange is the weaknesses the auditor has done, 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me 4 marks. So 4 marks for evidence, 2 marks for weaknesses, that is 6. So how many procedures should I be writing? How many procedures should I be writing? 3 to make it 9. I hope you're getting my point of concern here. This is what I am talking about. I got 2 deficiencies from the case. 2 deficiencies from the case worth 2 marks. I got 4 issues relating to evidence gathered. 4 issues relating to the evidence gathered. So 4 issues relating to the evidence gathered means 4 marks. So how many marks am I left with? 9 minus 2 minus 4. I'm left with 3 marks. So 3 marks means I need to write 3 procedures. Procedures on what? Procedures on asset held for sale. Is that clear with the marking scheme, all of you? Let's write the answer quickly for 9 marks. Let's find the answer, a proper way to answer. Now, when I'm answering the question, I'll answer it in 3 headings. So when my paper is being checked by the assessor, my assessor knows what am I writing. My first heading would be evidence. My second heading would be procedures. And my third heading would be deficiencies. 3 headings. Okay, let's write the evidence first. See how am I writing 1 mark answer properly. The planned disposal was discussed with management, is inappropriate, is alone inappropriate, because discussion alone is a verbal evidence. The planned disposal was discussed with management and alone is inappropriate. You should have done something else apart from discussion, and alone is inappropriate because discussion alone is a verbal evidence, full stop. Next, 1 mark. Further, the brief note is inappropriate evidence. The brief note is inappropriate evidence because asset held for sale is not an ordinary event. Therefore, the auditor should had made a detailed note which must include the conclusion of the auditor whether the treatment is right or wrong, rather than it contain the treatment of the management. So firstly, the problem is the brief note, right? Brief note is one problem. It should have been detailed note. One mark. And the second mark is that I should have given the conclusion of the auditor in my note rather than I'm giving the conclusion of the management. So I'm taking 2 marks for this paragraph, 1 plus 1. And the last thing, it arithmetically checked by a different member of the team. It seems that multiple members of the audit team are involved in the asset held for sale, which will create confusions on the adequacy of the work performed. One area should be allocated to one staff. One area should be allocated to one staff member. Otherwise, there will be so much confusion, and that confusion will compromise the adequacy of the evidence. So I got another 1 mark. So 4 marks. See how am I writing the answer for sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence? Is that right? Yes, there might be so many conflicts. There might be so many confusions, which will compromise the adequacy of the evidence. Is everyone clear on the structure of comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence? Whenever you're commenting, you need to justify why. So you get 4 marks, sorry, for evidence. Then you need to write in the procedures. Now tell me the procedures which we missed. Asset held for sale. Number 1, should I review the board minutes for the rationale to sell the asset? Review the board minutes for the rationale to sell the asset and its approval. That was not in the case study, right? Number 2, I should review the advertisement or the tender in the newspaper to confirm that the management has taken steps to sell the assets within 12 months. But if they have not put an advertisement in the newspaper or they don't have a plan to sell, then obviously how can the asset be sold in 12 months? So review the advertisement or the tender in the newspaper, because that is basically the management plan to sell. Then very important, review whether any quotations have been received, from potential buyers to confirm the adequacy of the fair value of the asset to be sold. Yes, exactly. You can also review the assumptions. You can also review the assumptions used by management in performing the impairment review or in determining the fair value. So do you believe all of this was done in the case study 1, 2, 3, 4, or is it different from the case study? Now imagine what the auditor has done. The auditor has just put a brief note. The auditor has just discussed it with the management, and the arithmetical accuracy was done by a different member of the team. Do you think you've gathered sufficient appropriate audit evidence on asset held for sale? Or the evidence you are gathering from 1, 2, 3, 4 is better? Quick answers. Do you believe the procedures you are doing as 1, 2, 3, 4 are better than what has been done in the case study? So are you all understanding what you need to do with a question like such, which says comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness and recommend procedures? Am I breaking the rules of CVRM? I am applying the procedures on asset held for sale, right? And the last one, you need to write the weaknesses. How many weaknesses we identified? The first one, the manual journal. The manual journal is posted by the finance director. The finance director is not the relevant person to post the journal entry, as the finance director is the finance director should only be involved in the strategic planning process and in overall in the overall monitoring of the financial systems. Can you believe you can do such an immature work from the finance director? So manual journal is posted by the finance director. The finance director is not the relevant person to post the journal entry, as the finance director should only be involved in a strategic planning process and in the overall monitoring of the financial system, not in the day-to-day operation, right? So 1 mark, 1 deficiency, 1 mark. Second mark for a deficiency. There is no competent staff. There is no competent staff in the company's finance department. There is no competent staff in the company's finance department who is capable of reviewing the journal entry for asset held for sale. Thus, it means that the finance department is incapable. The finance department is incapable of and it brings into doubt the financial statements prepared by the finance department, because it's an incapable finance department, right? I hope you understand the structure of the question. I'm just trying to put it on one page so you can view it in a very better manner. Please, I need quick answers from your side. Do you understand how I commented on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence right from here to here? Did you understand how I picked up a point justifying comment on the sufficiency and appropriateness of the evidence? Did you all understood how I wrote procedures? Right? And did you find the answer how I wrote the deficiencies with the reasons, proper reasons? Right? So I broke the question in 3 parts. Deficiencies, I broke the question into procedures, I broke the question into evidence. And the second part of this, there are 2 marks, right? One is the brief note, evidence. One is the brief note problem, and one is the conclusion. When I was giving you the lecture, I mentioned that the brief note is one problem, right? It should have been a detailed note, 1 mark. And then the conclusion should be of the auditor, not of the management, 1 mark. So is everyone now sound on the type 1 question and the type 2 question? Can you be capable of solving the remaining question yourself, the type 2, because that's the only one, December 16. So you need to continue the December 16 question, right? And will you be practicing the type 1 questions as well? Now, evidence is an important area, and I believe there is a chance of that in the March 2020 exams. You cannot just take it very casual. You need to put a proper time for March 2020 exams for a topic on evidence, type 1 and type 2, because there is a chance that it might come in, because it was not there in the December exams. So the chance of that develops for March 2020 exams. Examiner can come back with a question on evidence in the question number 2 of your exam paper. And please assure that you have revised your procedures in a good manner. You have practiced procedures with the techniques which has been taught to you into the session today. Right now, just one of the final things to discuss with you from the topic procedures and evidence, so that you're not making any further mistakes and blunders when you're going through writing the answer in exam paper. Right, I'll be sharing this Word file with all of you on the WhatsApp group. So if you've missed anything from the drafting element, you will still be getting this Word file, and you can take a printout and maintain this file with you as a proper reference for your preparation towards exams, right? Okay, now please focus, and I need to interact with all of you in a very effective manner, just to assure that you've got the message which I tried to deliver in the last 2.5 hours of the session today. We did today procedures, and we did today another topic known as evidence, right? Now, these two areas are very fundamentals, right? Did you got clarity on procedure and evidence in a better manner today in the session? Uh, were you able to have better understanding of how you need to do the topic procedures and evidence from the examination point of view, and then what exactly your examiner expects from you when you are writing a procedure and when you're writing an evidence? So is it giving you clarity? But again, please remember, the AAA paper can only pass if you practice, 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 practice. At least try to practice 5 to 6 questions on procedures from the last few papers. At least try to practice 3 to 4 questions on evidence. Then only you can start to get control. I've already recommended on my day 1 that you need to do the past papers from 2016 onwards. So 2016 onwards, try to do at least 4 to 5 questions on procedures. Try to do at least 3 to 4 questions on evidence, because that will develop your ability, and that will develop your confidence. You need to do the exams in March 2020. Right? So the final thing, procedures, please remember that for procedures, you should know the good uh, the attributes of a good procedure, sorry. You should know the attributes of a good procedure. You should know the ASP, or you should know the CVRM. You should know that the procedures should be with reason. If you're writing a procedure without reason, it's useless. Procedure with reason is equal to 1 mark. Please assure you know the mnemonic TADMSR, and you carefully apply it in the exam paper. You carefully apply it to exam paper. And please assure you read the case study carefully. Read the case carefully and extract the facts. Extract the facts from the case and convert them into procedures, right? There is no difference, right? Principal audit procedures and further audit procedures is one of the same thing. Further audit procedures simply mean that if a certain procedure is given in the exam paper, you will not repeat it. Further means other than those given in the case study. So otherwise, the way of writing procedure is the same, right? But further means extra, other than those given in the case study. Now, when you're going on the evidence, please assure that you know the type 1 and you know the type 2 questions on evidence. You should know the forms of evidence, like copy, like notes, like results or something in the form of original, right? You should know what makes evidence SAAE. Because if you don't know what makes evidence SAAE, you might struggle identifying, is it sufficient, is it not? Is it appropriate, is it not? So you should revise, and please assure that you are reading this article, which I recommended at the start of the session, Audit Procedures. This is a very, very good article which will give you examples, which will tell you the mistakes. So firstly, take out a red marker and a green marker, go through the article with the do's and don'ts. First, prepare yourself, right? Then do the past paper, then do the past paper, right? So first read this article with a red pen and a green pen so that you know what you can do and what you cannot do. And then at least practice 5 past papers for procedure and at least 4 past papers for evidences so that you're very properly prepared to tackle this topic in exam paper, right? So this is so far over the 3 days. Those of you who have participated live in the 3 days, did you feel any difference 3 days before and now 3 days after? Did you realize that since this webinar started, day one, where we focused on reading the mind of the examiner, day two, we focused on the risk of material misstatement, and day three, we focused on procedures and evidence. Have these 3 days given you a better picture of the AAA paper? Have this given you a better strategy of how you should be going down and giving your AAA paper? See, AAA is not a difficult paper. Indeed, it's a challenging paper. And if you know the techniques, you can do brilliant. But if you lack techniques, you might be doing the mistakes. You might be doing the mistakes which results in a failure. So my day one was very important because the day one was opening the mind of the examiner, right? So please assure that you are very affirm on your techniques, because if you're not affirm on your techniques, you're not very clear on the techniques, and you do the same mistakes you are doing over the last few sessions of AAA, you will not be getting past. So assure that you know the techniques and you're writing a good answer, you're writing a crisp answer, you are writing the answer which is very case specific, or you're writing an answer which is very down to the case study. So try to understand the techniques of the AAA paper. It is a challenging paper, but it is not a difficult paper. There is so much repetition in AAA. Do you agree with that? There is so much repetition in AAA paper. There is so much repetition of the questions in the AAA paper. There is so much repetition even in the last exam, December 19, even in the September 19 paper, there was so much repetition from the past papers. At times you are sitting in the exam hall and you realize this is from the 2016 exams. Oh, no, this is from the 2017 exams. There is so much repetition in the AAA paper. But if you have practiced a lot, you will be lucky. But if you have not practiced a lot, you might be unlucky. Practice 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. If you practice these 4 years in a very proper way, you are on track for success. You're on track for success, right? So this day three today is coming to an end, but we have a very, very important day tomorrow. You can watch my previous webinars, right, for procedures and evidence. I've already given the links of my previous webinars in my presentation, which I would encourage that you watch because they were very good webinars in terms of insights into procedures and evidence. So you can watch them apart from the one today. But we have a very, very challenging topic tomorrow where students are so weak at, and students have so many problems and so many issues with the topic which is coming tomorrow, which is ethical and professional issues. I hope this is an area of concern for students because they're so very bad in writing an answer for professional issues. They're so very unclear about professional issues. Ethics, I think, is a very sound area for students, but they're so very bad on professional issues. And obviously the quality control issues. So we have a very important topic tomorrow, which is ethical and professional issues, including the quality control issues. And I hope you will be interested in this topic because this is one of the weakest area for the students, not ethics, rather professional issues, rather quality control issues, right? So that is what I will be drilling down on the day 4 tomorrow. And please ensure that you participate in the live session tomorrow because that's really, really important. Now, just one last thing before I end the session. In these last 3 to 4 minutes, please ensure that you keep dropping the feedback and you do mark the feedback at the end of the session even. Now, just one last thing, right? Do you believe that wherever you see a treatment, wherever you see a treatment in AAA paper, and you have to do some work on the treatment. That is the same for anything in the AAA paper. If you have a treatment in front and you want to do anything on the treatment, you are doing a question on risk, you are doing a question on evidence, or you're even doing a question on reporting, because accounting treatment comes in all the three questions. If you are solving a question on audit risk, or the risk of material misstatement, and you come across an accounting treatment, what will you do? MTRI, and you will take straight away 3 marks. If you come across a question on evidence, which also has an accounting treatment, again you will apply the MTRI, and you will take straight away 4.5 marks. Now reporting, which is on the last day, even in reporting, because there is an accounting issue in reporting. So in a reporting question, when you come across an accounting treatment, when you come across an accounting issue, your answer is still the same, materiality, treatment. But because it's a reporting question, you cannot write risk in a reporting question because it's a reporting question, right? So it will be materiality, treatment, plus impact. Impact on the audit report is equal to 3 marks. So you cannot deny this fundamental of MTRI, or materiality, treatment, impact. So are you getting this message that whenever you see a treatment, whether you see a treatment in risk, whether you see a treatment in evidence, or whether you see a treatment in reporting, there are some basic things you have to do. In a risk, you have to do the MTRI. In an evidence, you have to do the MTRI. In the reporting, you have to do the materiality treatment, but not the risk because it's a reporting question. So eventually, you will be writing the impact. So is that structure clear to all of you, how important treatments are in the AAA paper? And the one who is good in the treatments, the one who has given the strategic business reporting exams very near to the AAA paper or with the AAA paper, you are in a better position to pass the AAA exams. But if you have given your reporting exams 1 year ago, 2 years ago, you might struggle with accounting issues. So you need to imagine that those of you who have given the SBR paper very recently, or those of you who are giving the SBR paper in March with the AAA paper, you are in a better position to control the treatments. And the one who controls the treatment in the AAA exam will be successful. So please ensure that you start to revise the treatments. If anyone has given exams on reporting a year ago or 2 years ago, right? Is that clear with the structure of treatments? And do you believe the structure of treatment is very important for the triple exams? Quick yes and no answers, because I'm just towards the ending of the session. Okay, perfect. Okay, now that's marking the end of my session today. I hope you had a productive session today. You had productive learnings today from the limitation of 3 hours. And I will be live tomorrow for the day 4 of this Practice to Pass webinar for AAA exams for March 2020, which are being organized by ACCA Pakistan. And we will be drilling the ethical, professional, and quality control issues tomorrow. Have a nice day. Prepare yourself very effectively for exams coming up in March. Don't repeat the mistakes you have been repeating in the past exam sittings, and inshallah, you will be successful. Right, so I'll be seeing you live tomorrow, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Pakistan Standard Time with the start of the day 4. Have a nice day. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.